Okay, so today we will be reading 4Q174 together from the Dead Sea Scrolls, which is it's a fascinating manuscript looking at we'll be looking at some exegetical practices at the Qumran community, as well as which includes biblical texts, citing biblical texts, but also incorporating their own interpretations into certain texts. This is the foundation of our study is going to be Psalm 1 and Psalm 2. I did a couple of lectures or a couple of readings in the fall on Psalm 1 and 2. A couple of you were there, and this is sort of an extension of that. But we'll read a couple of passages from Psalm 1 and 2, and then after that, we're going to jump straight into scrolls. So enjoy the vowels right now, because vowels are going away very soon. And as you'll see, it's a challenge at first, but with practice, reading without vowels isn't too crazy. So does anybody want to read Psalm 1:1 out loud?
Be glad to give it a shot.
Oh, was that Tim?
Doug.
Oh, that was Doug. Sorry.
Ashrei ha'ish asher lo halak ba'atzat reshaim uvederek chata'im lo amad uvemoshav letzim lo yashav.
Awesome. This is the very famous opening to the Psalter, right? Sort of setting up this this ideal for the righteous person, right? This person who does not do any evil, but if we continued on the psalm, we would hear that this person meditates on the word of the Lord. They delight in the word of the Lord. And Tim, you were here last time. What's some of the imagery used in Psalm 1?
Yeah, so you've got the sort of a threefold, sort of not really contrast, but a progression, I guess would be the way to put it. So you've got walking and then sort of standing and sitting. So this movement, it's a whole movement, and then it brings nature into the movement.
Yes.
And physical reality into the movement. Which
specifically on the nature. What about nature does it bring in?
So you have the path. You know, and then later on, you've got obviously the tree, the stream, all of these very picturesque elements.
Very picturesque elements. And in fact, what happens in Psalm 1 is you get a picture of the Garden of Eden.
Yes.
Right? So the ideal person in the mind of whoever's putting the Psalter together is meditating on the word of the Lord, and this person is in a specific location. They look like they not only are they in the garden, but they are fruitful like the trees of the garden. And there's a couple of studies out there. We went into this in depth whenever we did this in the fall, and there's a couple of really good studies on this that show that it looks like whoever's putting the Psalms together is purposefully doing this with Eden in mind. They're putting together this ideal person, and the tree and the Garden of Eden is at the center of it. So that's Psalm 1. And then you also get contrasted with the wicked. The wicked are there. They're fading away. They're like chaff blown away in the wind. And then it says the Lord knows the path of the righteous, but the wicked will perish. That's how Psalm 1 ends. And then Psalm 2 picks up on sort of a different theme, but you have this comparison with the righteous person and the wicked as well in Psalm 2. Does anyone want to read the first 2 verses of Psalm 2?
I'll do it.
Okay, Joseph.
למה רגשו גויים ולאומים יהגו ריק?
Mm-hmm.
יתייצבו מלכי ארץ ורוזנים נוסדו יחד על אדוני ועל משיחו.
Mitsuyan. So we have this question: why are these nations going crazy? And why are these people? This Yehgu language is the opposite of what the person does, what the righteous person does in Psalm 1. So in Psalm 1, this is the meditation of the word of the Lord by the righteous. And in Psalm 2, this is the counter to what the righteous person does when they meditate. So it's sort of the idea of everybody's meditating on something. You're either meditating on the commandments of God, or you are, meditating emptiness, right? Reek. And then you have this imagery of all of these kings of the earth gathering together against God and against his Mashiach. So in Psalm 2, we get we get the righteous person and the wicked people sort of here in this comparing and contrasting, where the ideal person is given to us in Psalm 1 with a couple of thoughts on the wicked. And then in Psalm 2, we get the righteous person standing with God against the wicked. And the rest of the psalm is about, about God and his Messiah being or the wicked fighting against them. So as we read the actual scroll that we're going to get to, let's have these verses in mind as we get to the scroll. Okay, so we sort of did this, just a brief shotgun of Psalm 1 and 2 to sort of prime the pump for what's about to happen whenever we hit this scroll. So we are here in this 4Q 174. We're going to begin, even though this technically isn't line 1 of this big manuscript. It's actually down here. We'll call it line 1 to make things easy. And even though we already have critical editions of this text, let's sort of treat this like an exercise where, let's say we're out camping around the Dead Sea. There's a cave. We sort of chill in it, and we spend the night there, and lo and behold, we find a scroll. Let's throw out the critical editions we have now and do the exercise of, what if we just found a scroll around Qumran, which we thought we'd sort of found them all, but now is sort of a possibility. Now with a couple of scrolls that were found last year and were announced a couple of weeks ago. So we will look at the scroll itself. We'll try to read from the scroll, and we'll see if we can reconstruct parts of the scroll that are missing without the critical editions, without other influences from what has already been written and said about this scroll. So we're going to begin in the first line. So I've given some letters here to help, because obviously there's some torn up pieces here in the scroll. There's some pieces that are faded, as you can see right here. However, I'm gonna go out of the presentation real quick. And go to this infrared picture of the scroll. So the scroll, you can find it. This is open access if you go to deadseascrolls.org. This is the original picture where most of what we're going to read off of is from, but they also have infrared pictures as well. And as you can see, these parts of the text that are super blurry in a regular photograph, see this whole section right here? It's a little triangle section where it's all blurry. When we do infrared scans of it, we can see individual letters a lot better, right? So the helping letters up here, I've put them there based upon what is seen in the infrared. Okay. Okay. So here comes the fun part. Who wants to start reading the scroll?
Oh.
So to start us off.
Ashereh.
Oh, who was that?
Ron.
Ron? Okay.
Yeah.
So we're right here. Are you right here with Ashereh?
Well, I know what the first word is, and so that's got to be Ashereh.
Yeah, this is Ashereh right here. Yeah. However, we do have one.
Right.
We have a little bit right here. So we have probably Mem, Dalid, and when we look at the infrared, this is definitely a Resh. And you see the sheen here.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we have Midrash.
Midrash, yep.
Oh.
And we've if we go back and look at the text here, sort of zoom out of the scroll,
Midrash.
we see that the previous line ends about halfway across the scroll. And this is a new line. So the writer has completed whatever paragraph has happened above, and we just jumped straight into something new. And we know that because of the line break right here. So Midrash is there's a ton of debate on how to translate or understand that, and I don't really care about the academic debate on that, but it's I almost think of it as a sectioned off header for practical reasons right here. It's providing us with a new teaching for the texts that are about to pop up. Okay. So we have the first word is midrash, and then Ron correctly. So this is a mem here in front of the ashrei, but yep. But you see the aleph, sheen, resh, and then potentially yod. And then we have a little break here. However, we see that there's a yod and a sheen over here.
Mm.
And if since I primed you guys to go into this exercise with Psalm 1 and Psalm 2 in mind, we could reconstruct what's happening here. If we know this is Ashrei, and we know that this is a yod and a sheen, and afterwards we have, if we looked at the infrared, we have Asher and Lo, which you can't see here. But if we go to the infrared, you can see it right here. You see the aleph, the yod, the sheen. You see the aleph, the sheen, the resh. You see the lamed, which is characteristically going above the line, and the aleph, and potentially a hey. That's this part right here.
So this is like announcing here's an exegetical reflection on quote this verse from Psalm 1.
That's exactly this is how they're going to quote what's going on, and yeah, rather than going Tahila Aleph, they start with the beginning of the psalm. Okay.
Cool.
So this is sort of a practice round. This one's an easy line, right? Because we know we see where it's quoting from. We know the context of what's popping up, Psalm 1 in mind. And so from here, We can guess that this is ba'atzat, right? And we can assume that this is halak. So we had midrash me ashrei ha'ish asher lo halak ba'atzat.
Now, will they only quote the amount of verse they want to comment on, or they just kind of quote a random amount of the verse to just indicate what verse they're talking about?
So for this scroll, and for we'll see it a couple of other times. They use the first couple of lines to invoke what is about to come up. So they won't quote all of Psalm 1 to say that this is our interpretation for Psalm 1. They will assume that you, the reader, know, because this is a scribal community, right? These people are spending their time poring over the text over and over and over. They are taking seriously the call to meditate in Psalm 1 on the Torah. So this community is just over and over and over and over and over again memorizing the text. So whenever, if you were to go to Qumran and you were to just say Ashrei Ha'ish Asher, someone somewhere would finish, oh yeah, Lo halak ba'atzat Reshaim uvderech hatim lo amad, right? Or lo yishav, sorry. So they are assuming that you, the reader, is picking up on where they're quoting from. And this is an easy one. They'll do this with like stuff in the middle of, as we'll see, in the middle of Isaiah and in the middle of Ezekiel, where they're just going to assume that you, the good scribe, the good reader, are ready to go. And but we have they have favorite verses, just like just like your church probably has favorite verses that they always go to. The New Testament has favorite verses as well, right?
Mean
that yeah. So so any questions on any of the letters or forms that we've seen? So this is a practice run. Here in the next couple of slides, I'm definitely going to want some more participation.
So it's interesting. With Be'atzat, the Beit, comparing that to this scribe's Mem.
Yep.
That's a pretty similar kind of stroke on that letter.
Yep, y'all see that? So you have the Mem up here.
Right.
And you have the Beit right here. Also notice the Resh right here.
Mm-hmm.
And the Yod right here. And we'll see that Dalits, Reshes, Yods, Vavs, they all look the same. If you have an untrained eye, all look the same. Baits, Kafs, Mems, those all look the same. There's just little details here and there to distinguish them. And that will be an interesting point coming up. We will run into one issue where we could potentially have a text critical emendation to what's in the Masoretic text. So I'm going to continue on. So if you all have Psalm 1 still open, we have a midrash, Ashrei Ha'ish Asher lo halak ba'atzat. We can assume that the next word is going to be what?
Reshaim.
Reshaim. And we keep going in the text and look, what do we have?
Reshaim.
Reshaim. Let's see the Reshin Ein with the Yod and the Mem.
That's a solid Mem Sofit. Okay.
That one's very helpful.
Yeah.
The final mems are pretty distinct, so that's nice.
Oh, man.
Does anyone want to try this next word out?
Omid.
Oh, this word right here.
Yeah.
What did you say?
Oh no, I said omed. That's not right.
Oh no, no. So this is where the psalm ends. This is where
Okay.
they stopped quoting the psalm here.
Okay.
But
Oh, I got it.
can anybody? If we can't see that, let's go to the infrared then.
So,
Is it kasher?
Oh, it could be kasher.
I see.
Basar.
We see, but we see the sheen and the resh. Those ones are pretty helpful, right?
yeah.
Could be a mem.
Could be
I
a
don't see the
fake.
line, so maybe it's not a mem. Could be a cough, could be a bait.
Yeah.
Let's go and see see if the infrared helps us out at all.
Mm.
So we have the Reshaim right here, right? You'll see the Reshaim. That's very clear. And this is the letter that we're trying to figure out.
Is it it could be a pay even, I guess, but not a fay. But,
It's a pay.
yeah.
Pesher.
See that little lip
Yeah.
where you see that. And we also know that this is probably pesher because this is the word that they will use after quoting the scripture to say, now we're getting to the actual interpretation part.
Right.
It's sort of like the end quote, here's my commentary. Again, there's a lot of debate on what that word is, and I don't care to get into that scholarly discussion. So there's that. And then we get to...
Hey, we get a Greek letter.
Oh.
P. No, it looks like a P, but
Oh.
it's a pay.
And then we start getting to the part where the scroll starts breaking up.
Mm.
It's probably Hadavar here. So there's that would make sense. The interpretation of the word that's about to happen, that had just happened. And then we have a break here. So this cut is this one right here. And we don't really know what's going on here. And again, we have some breaks here in the text. But overall, this is probably what we have. Does anybody know what the Sharim Derek would be? How to translate that?
From the way.
Oh, the ones who turn aside from the way?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so this is from Sur,
Mm.
right? Sur to turn, Sure
Mm.
mi Derek. So we have them quoting the first line of Psalm 1, and now they're going to talk about some people that have actually turned from the way. Unfortunately for us,
Probably those Christians or something, yeah.
well, I don't know if that's they're probably actually more talking about the temple community, the actual temple complex, because they are not fans of the
Right.
the actual temple complex. But unfortunately, this is where the line breaks.
Mm.
So we have this. They'll call it the wakat or the vakat. So we have our line right here, where we have the pesher and probably hadavar. Then we have a break, and then potentially shari. What was it? Shari haderek or miderek. But we have a break, and unfortunately, the rest of the idea is gone. Even if we go to the next line starts its own idea. But here's what we have for line 1. Does anyone want to read it out loud without its vowels?
I'll do it.
Okay.
Midrash me'ashrei ha'ish asher lo halach be'atzat reshaim pesher hadavar al sarei miderech.
Perfect. That's great. Yeah, y'all are. We're reading. We're constructing our own transcription of the scrolls right now. Like, this is like legit stuff, right? None of this critical edition. No one else is reading the scrolls for us. From now on, we read the scrolls for ourselves, right? That's right.
Very cool.
So we're going back to line 2. So this is the first line where we were at. We had this break here. We use the infrared to help us, especially in this blurry region. And unfortunately, there's a cut in the rest of the thought. There's a couple more words there, but what are you going to do? So we get to the next line. The next line starts. Anyone guess what this word is right here?
Is it asher?
I think it's a share. So we could sort of see the aleph, the sheen, and the resh a bit, right? So asher.
Asher katuv,
I think so, which would mean what?
which is written.
Which is written, which probably makes sense in this context, right? Okay. And this little blurred out image right here, this blurred out piece right here is probably bait. So we have bait. We want to guess what this letter is.
Is it tet?
I don't know if it's tet. Let's see if the infrared helps us at all.
Besh.
So we started the line here, and if we looked at the infrared, you could see Asher was a good call, good guess. Asher, we see that the bait here and the cough look very similar, right? The cough, ketuv, the passive participle.
Besofo.
Samic?
Besufo.
So I think it's Samic. So we can sort of see a bait right here. Samic, and
Pe.
I think that's a pay.
And
And
va.
it's cut off a bit here, but I think this is a resh, which
Besefer.
besefer, which contextually you're going to find something written besefer, right?
I was thinking written at its end.
Oh, okay.
And it's reading it as like sufo or something.
Gotcha. So this is where sefer ends. So we're here on the second line. The sefer ends right here. And there's probably a yod and a sheen here. And an ein, a yod, and a hey. Someone who hasn't said anything yet. You may need to unmute yourself. Doug, you have any ideas of what that would be?
Not sure.
Okay. Shed? No? Stuart?
I'm about as useful as a 2-year-old right now.
This is Isaiah.
Ah,
You see? Normally you'd expect a vav after here, but we have the next word is hanavi. Right? Hanavi.
Prophet. Yeah.
So what's coming up next? So the scribe has quoted Psalm 1, right?
Yeah.
And now, and given a little interpretation of it, which unfortunately we didn't get to see, although we know it's about people who left the way. And now we're about to get a quote from Isaiah, which is the person at Qumran, the scribe at Qumran, whoever's doing this, is connecting Psalm 1 and this quote from Isaiah, right? Because it's whatever the Sherei Mederek, there's only a couple of words at the end of that. And the scribe is connecting that Psalm 1 with a share with what's about to happen with Isaiah. So this scribe at Qumran is sort of doing, I mean, we would call it this canonical approach of reading the Torah, where these passages are sort of bleeding into each other, where everything sort of seems to have this connection. So the wicked and the people that turn away in Psalm 1 to the scribe here is also whoever Isaiah is about to talk about. Okay? So this is the line right here. Asher kitov b'sefer Yeshayahu Hanavi. Then we get to the next part. Get a little break here, but this is probably la. We see this little ink spot up here. The lameds normally go up above the line. So that's really helpful whenever we have breaks right here. Anyone have a guess of what this word is?
Achriyot? Achriyat? Okay.
It's definitely so acharit.
Acharit.
Acharit. So this is a yod probably because the vavs are a bit longer. See how the yod sort of only goes like halfway down the resh?
Yeah.
The vavs are normally the same length. So acharit. So what's acharit?
It's,
Afterward.
Afterwards, yeah. And the acharit is connected to the next word. So this is probably this, even though we have a break right here, this is probably a hey and a yod. And this is probably one of the mems. You could see the little part right here and little part going up here. And this is probably a yod as well. See how small it is?
yeah.
And another final mem.
Hayomim, days. The
Hayomim,
days.
I think it's Hayomim. And interestingly, you have it spelled here without a yod, or sorry, without a vav. So it almost looks like C's, Hayomim or something like that. But it's actually Hayomim. So you said Acharit is afterwards, right? Let's pair it up with Yomim.
After the days.
After the days. This is their way of talking about their ideology of the eschaton. This is their eschatological time frame. So like the sort of American way of saying it is end times. For the Qumran community, they would say Acharit Hayomim. So this text already, we're in the middle of line 2, right? And this text already is putting Psalm 1 and Isaiah together, right? And not only that, but it's telling us to read these texts eschatologically, like in this end times, end of days sort of way, which is very Qumranic. I don't know if that's a word, but it is 100% something you would see from these scrolls. Okay, and then we have at the end of the days, and we have this text right here, this word. It's a little blurry, so let's go to the infrared and see if that can help us at all. So we've had here's the Yomim, right, that we had. And then we have these letters right here. That's what we're trying to figure out.
So Vav, Yod, maybe? Or Resh Yod.
Could be Resh. Could be, so see how this is a bit longer than these two?
So Vav Yod at first was my guess, but
yeah.
Oy. Chet? Or,
It could be a chet, it could be a hey.
mm,
And this one is probably the same as this one.
Chai.
So this is probably just vayihi.
Oh. Mm.
Uh-huh. So you get vayihi here. We'll stick with the infrared because it's a bit tricky for this next part. And then we get a
Bait?
cough or a bait or So do you want to see the difference between the hey and the chet? Is you have the hey here,
Mm,
and this is the chet.
yeah.
See how you have that sort of longer line up here for the hey,
Right.
where the chet is closed off.
Right. More boxy.
It's more boxy. This little line here is a zayin.
That's a Zion.
This is a kof. Yep, that's a zayin, and that's a kof.
So Bekhuz. Okay.
Yeah. So let's have some fun here. Because this could be a bait or it could be a kof. And this is what we have so far. The la acharit hayamim veyehi, neither ka chazak, chetzkat, or bachetzkat. But we have another break in the text. However, we have been told already that this is coming from where?
Isaiah.
This is coming from Isaiah. Let's try something together. Okay? Let's get out of here. Sorry, I'm going to reshare my screen here in a second. You'll see accordance up right now?
Yes.
Okay, let's try this out. So let's use accordance to see if we can reconstruct the text on our own. So we know we're in Isaiah, right? What was the word again that we were trying to figure out?
Might be Kazakh, but straight.
Might be. So we're looking for kof, maybe a bait, a het, a zayin, and a kof. So let's see if, just for fun, see if we can find something along these lines. Nope. Now, accordance doesn't like this. It says it's not a word. So if this isn't a word, this isn't one word, what could it be then?
Could be. Well, it certainly could be an inseparable prefix of the cough on the fronting the something else, or
Yeah.
run into letters. I mean, you don't have a lot of spaces necessarily. So
Yeah. Let's see if this works. Oh, it doesn't like that. What if we put a plus here? Oh, we got a hit in Isaiah. Okay. What do we have here? So does anyone want to read the Isaiah 8 here? This is your few chances to have vowels today.
a little small for my.
Oh, it's too small. Sorry. Is that helpful?
Yeah,
Okay.
I can do it. That's fine.
Okay.
Kicho, well, pardon me, strength. Kicho amar Adonai Elai kechezechat hayad vayisedeni
Sereni.
Sereni, pardon, Sereni, Milechet, Bederek, Jose, lemod.
Lemor. Perfect.
More. I give font.
So, do you think we potentially have the candidate for this little vacancy?
Maybe.
Maybe. We have either a bait or a cough here, but let's look at the textual apparatus. That's what this A is. And look at, do you see the apparatus down here at the bottom? Let me see if I can keep it. Is it too small? Let me make it bigger. You all see this is the textual apparatus?
Mhm.
Interestingly, we have some manuscripts, including L here, that just leave it out completely, leave the cough out.
Mm.
And we have some manuscripts that actually have bait here instead of the cough.
Mm.
Which, if we looked at back at our text that we had, that was the issue we were having trying to figure out what the letter is, right?
Right.
So even these scribal traditions are having issues with figuring out or determining whether this is a bait or a cough, because cough here looks weird. Kahizkat hayad, right? As the strength of the hand or something like that. It's really weird. It's a weird phrasing, especially to start it off, because this isn't like comparing anything. But if you had a bait here with the strength of the hand, that probably feels better, especially with a strong hand or with the strength of the hand the Lord spoke to me.
Mm.
I think that works out better. And we have the Islani. Oh, what is that? Oh,
From Sur.
right, yeah. And not only that, what do we have? Derek from walking in the way.
Mm.
Okay, let's posit that as a candidate, and let's start line 3.
I don't know, Dave. I sort of like the cough because you can sort of think of it as, he was slapping me upside the head with his hand pretty hard. But I don't know.
I mean, it could be. I mean, but you all see the potential spelling mistake there.
Yeah.
Right, you're mistaking these letters for each other, and luckily, we're not the only ones having that issue. It seems like the scribes are themselves also having that issue. So this is the beginning of line 3. And if we actually go to the infrared, we could see this a lot better. We'll scroll out, right? This was our previous line, and here's the line we're at now. The line starts with the hey, some sort of fuzzy letter. We're not sure. Another hey, and we know these are heys, right? Because they have the strong top compared to the chets, which have that boxy top that's closed off. And then we have hey. We said this was Zain. We saw that earlier, and another hey. Right?
Jose. Mm-hmm.
So this is Hazeh. And if this is Ha'am, then we got our Isaiah text. Those were the last 2 words of the Isaiah text. Right? This people that we saw a couple seconds ago.
How did the introduction of that verse go? Was it a Vayehi though? That was odd.
Yeah, the Vayehi is odd. Unless they are taking this as bait instead of a cough. See, so here's another bait. Do y'all see the screen, right? Y'all see the infrared?
Yes.
So here's definitely a bait where my mouse is, right? Because we know, spoiler, this is Hanavi again. So this is definitely a bait. And the question is this a bait? Because if this is Vayehi and this is a bait, then it would be, and it happens with the strength of the hand that the Lord did this. But if it was a cough, it was like the strength of the hand, that one might work out as well.
Yeah, but there's no mention of, Ko Amar Adonai Elai. It
Yeah.
just
It just goes straight into it.
Yeah, so it's almost like this Vayehi is the way of introducing the quotation of the verse. Or,
Yeah.
I mean, surely it's not a variant, right, for the Isaiah verse.
No. I think it's jumping. It's skipping that Ko Amar Adonai part and just going straight into the whatever this oracle is. But we also can see, if we want to guess based upon these other lines, there's probably 3-4 words. And if we have the kahazkat here, the other words are hayad, right? And vayisreini, the turning around, right? Or he rebuked me or something like that. And by the time we get down to, then there's also the mileket and bederek. That's 4 words that you could potentially pack into here. And by the time the next line starts, we have ha'am hazeh. You'll see that?
Yeah.
Awesome. So he's taking these verses with similar vocab, similar ideas, and he's saying that the scribe is sort of playing with working them together. Right? We'll see this even more. And not only that, he's framing it with the acharit hayomim, with this eschatological timeline. Okay, so let's continue on where we're at. Oh, so here's the line 2 and line 3b. Anyone want to read it out loud without vowels? Doug?
אשר כתוב בספר ישעיה הנביא לאחרית היומים ויהי כחזקת, not sure on that. היד Usreini Milachat Bederek. Yeah, yep. I'm sure I butchered some of that. So
no, it's great. So Vayisreini, that would be the Masoretic way of doing it. And the mileket here is actually the infinitive. So mem plus the infinitive, leket, bederek, and then ha'am hazeh. And so this whole space that we have cut out of the scroll by guessing that this is in Isaiah, we can reconstruct our own. We can reconstruct the text by some good guessing. Because we got 4-ish words that could fit there. We got 4 words from Isaiah 38 here. Or sorry, Isaiah 8, not 38. We'll do Ezekiel 37 is later. Isaiah 8, and the next line starts with Ha'am Hazeh.
Hey, Dave, a question, just more generally. I know that there's a ton of cuneiform tablets that haven't really been completely, deciphered, run through, etc. But in terms of the scrolls, and I know with the history of the Dead Sea Scrolls from Qumran, that a lot of them, it took a lot of time to get them a lot transcribed because of the condition of the scrolls. Mm-hmm. But I guess my question is there, in terms of scrolls that would be Hebrew scrolls, are there any, to what degree, if any, are there scrolls that are still trying to be deciphered.
Oh, well, I mean, we just had the scrolls that were just found. Those, which I think a number of those were in Greek and not in Hebrew.
Right.
But there, I don't know to what extent or how many Hebrew scrolls we have that aren't available to the public or even transcribed. But I do know that there's a lot of politics behind the Dead Sea Scrolls scholarship and keeping of the scrolls. So there are probably some. You'll even see. You'll actually see in some of the critical editions of the scrolls, like the Discoveries of the Judean Desert, DJD. That's the standard critical edition of the scrolls in Hebrew.
Okay.
They'll have in some of the scrolls, it'll say like, this manuscript has been lost in the museum or something like that. Like they wrote it down and transcribed it, and then it gets lost later. Wow. Just because the stuff, whenever you file it away, it just goes missing. So that happens, and who knows what scrolls are lying beneath, a pile of books or scrolls
in those boxes with the Ark of the Covenant in that big warehouse.
Oh yeah, it's definitely in the Area 51, right? Whatever the Indiana Jones artifacts are, it's definitely there. Okay, so we started line 3, and then we'll just keep on rolling. So we had the Ha'am Hazeh here, and now let's see if we can figure out this next word. So it looks like we either have a yod or a vav here, right? Got the little lip.
Hey.
Hey.
Mem.
Yeah, you can see the little tail up top here. So we got a mem, probably.
Hey.
Hey.
Hema?
Yeah. Vahema, which is just they, them, sort of pronoun. We could definitely see the aleph here. But if we go to the infrared scans again, we can definitely see the asher. And not only the asher, but what about here?
Is that Katuv again?
I think it's Katuv again. Yeah, we've had it before. Katuv. Then we definitely have a lamed here. So we get this Asher Katuv, potentially Alehem, right? Which would be what?
On them?
Yeah, concerning them, about them, against them, maybe. We'll see how ominous this is. And then we get things a little broken up a bit. But after the Alehem, we got the Beit and a Samic here. So what can we sort of guess is right here? Based upon what we've already seen.
So Suf or Sefer or
yeah, I think we go Sefer because look what's next. Yod. This is a Het. It's probably maybe a Zain, a Kof, an Ein, or an Aleph and a Lamed. Who's this? Mizet, Tim?
the Sefer, it's the book of Ezekiel, maybe Ezekiel?
Yeah, it's the book of Ezekiel.
Yeah.
So we go back to our slide. So this is what's written against them. We have Besefer, and we have Ezekiel, and look what comes up next. So after we have Ezekiel, we have this word right here.
The prophet.
Yeah, Hanavi again. So
Yeah.
so the scribe is combining the Psalter, Isaiah, and Ezekiel, just smashing them together.
Bring it on. Bring it on.
All of it. So we have Hanavi and then Asher and another Lamed. And unfortunately, the text is completely broken again. So let's try to do this again. See if we can reconstruct the text ourselves. So let me share my other screen. You'll see the accordance again.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this is what we had for Isaiah, right?
Yeah.
So now we're in Ezekiel. What do we have so far with our text? Actually, let me put these side by side so we can look at these at the same time. Sorry, it takes a couple seconds to move everything around. All right, now I can share the screen. You'll see the accordance alongside the PowerPoint.
Yes.
Okay. So here's what we have so far. We have the Ha'am Hazeh, right, which went with the Isaiah text. Then we have Vahema Asher Kitov Ale Hema Besefer Yehezkel Hanavi Asher, and let me get at this Lamed. We don't really know what comes up next.
Probably
Just
low, given the tenor. Of what he's
maybe low, but if we search for Lamed in Ezekiel,
Yeah.
we're probably going to get a ton of hits. So what's one way we can get around? We can potentially see if this is a quote from Ezekiel. What will we do from here?
I mean, he hasn't hit the quote from Ezekiel yet, has he? Is this
Well, that's the question. Is the Asher kicking off the quote?
right? If not, then we go back to maybe
Well, Hamazeh went with Isaiah.
Yeah.
Maybe we could go the other direction.
Batuv, or
Let's go to the beginning of line 4 and see if we can do something with that. Because if he's quoting Ezekiel, then there's probably like 3 or 4 words in that space, right? In this space, there's probably 3 or 4 words that he could start quoting and then potentially, like we saw with Isaiah, move on to the next line. So let's see. So this is how line 3 ended, or at least where we had it. And line 4, we go to the infrared. We can definitely see we have some letters at the beginning here. This is the Ha'am Hazeh, and this is the next word that we have here on the next line. We could definitely see a Lamed right here, right?
Mm-hmm.
Definitely see a Lamed right here. Potentially a Yod or a Vav, a Hey, a Mem, and a Hey.
Mm.
So let's play around with this in accordance to see what we can do. There's a nice function called a wildcard, which is this asterisk in accordance. And let's say that the previous line, let's just see if the previous line starts the quote with Ezekiel. So if it does, then by the time we get to this next line, let's say this next line starts or is continuing the quote, then there's also this command called words within. We've seen before that we probably have about 5 words there. And then we don't know what the word starts with, so we'll use a wild card. We know there's a Lamed, We don't know what's between the lamids because they don't really look like they're side by side. We know that there's another lamid again. We see the yod, the hey, the mem, and the hey. Let's do this and see what Ezekiel does. Oh, selected lexeme form cannot be found in the BHS text. What will we go? What will we do from here?
Maybe we transcribed the letter wrong.
Maybe we transcribed the letter wrong. Which one?
Probably could be the yod.
The yod. So let's do a wild card here then. That letter is actually wrong because wild card can just mean anything. Another thing that is interesting is the suffix on this word. So if this is a suffix, this isn't one that you normally see in the Hebrew Bible. This is one that comes later in other Hebrew texts. So,
is there a way to search in something beyond the BHS?
Could
you search in an alternative text beyond the BHS?
Well, what I would do then is if the suffix that if we're going to guess this is a suffix, because we've seen this suffix earlier in the text on aleichem, or other than aleichem, which we normally would assume from biblical Hebrew, we had aleichema with the hey. So let's take off that and see what happens. Oh, look at that. We have 51 hits from Ezekiel. Well, I don't know if I would want to filter through 51 hits. So if we're going to assume aleihema is a suffix, let's search for suffixes, pronominal suffixes. And you could just search for them in general. And sure enough, we get 16 hits where you have a word starting with lamed, 5-ish words between another word that has this lamed with the suffix. This one doesn't look, I wouldn't go with this one because we don't really have a lamed going up here. This is only one word between lakol and gilulechem, but we do have the lechem, which looks a lot like what we're looking for. This one doesn't really work. There's no lamed before it. There's too many words between this lamed and this one, plus it doesn't have the right suffix. This one doesn't really work out. This one doesn't really work out. This one doesn't really work out. Again, we have the lechol. We got the hem instead of the hem. Get another hem. We've got lo before this, but we're not looking for a cha. We're looking for hem. And we end up with a hit here in Ezekiel 27. Or sorry, 37. This one could work. V'lo yitamu od ba'gilu lechem. We've got a lamed, got a couple of words here, and we've got a lamed, some sort of space, a lamed, and a third person pronoun. Suffix, or is third person suffix. See if there's any more that work in Ezekiel. I don't think there is, because you have the lifnei gilu lechem, but there's not really, you really want a couple of words between that lifnei and gilu lechem, right? So I think we have a quote from Ezekiel 37 here.
Nice.
Right? I think so. Look at this. Put a couple of words here where you have that. And if that's the case, then here's the text that we have for line 3 and line 4a. Does anyone want to read this out loud without any vowels? Nick, you want to go? You're not even listening, are you?
Sorry, I'm listening, but I'm in a public park right now.
Oh, okay.
Just
That's
observing.
fine. I don't want you to look like a weirdo in the park.
No, that's fun.
Keith or Thea? Either of you want to go? If not, that's fine.
Hello. Yes. Hello. Sorry. I think I have very unstable signal.
Oh, okay.
I'm driving. If I did it, it'll be
Oh.
ugly. It would be ugly if I did it. So
Yeah, please don't do this while you're driving. So we have I'll go ahead and do it. So we have the Ham Hazeh, right, from the previous quote from Isaiah. Then we have Hema, sorry, Asher Kituv Alehema Besefer Yechezkel Hanavi Asher. And here's where we have the reconstructed text.
Mm.
We have the lo, potentially with a vav, maybe not. Both work. Lo yitma'u od bagilulehema. Anyone know yitma'u? Yitma'u.
It's a yiktal something, third person plural, but
Is it taste or decree?
That is I think that one's with an
No, sorry.
Yes. This is to become unclean. Become ritually unclean. So the quote from Ezekiel is, they will no longer make themselves ritually unclean. Bagilulehem is their idols. This is a big thing in Ezekiel.
Yeah.
So this word yitma'u that we have here is evoking this cultic language.
Mm.
Okay, let's keep that in mind as we keep reading.
Yeah.
With the because this is a big problem that the Qumran community has with this is why they broke off from the temple in Israel, is they thought that they were doing things wrong and that they had actually defiled the temple. And that is why we get this eschatological background that this scribe was throwing in here. And now we have the scribe combining Psalm 1, Isaiah, and Ezekiel all together. Just smashing them all together.
Mash up.
Yeah. And we have this next bit of text, which we're going to go to the infrared scan because it's a lot easier to see. Y'all are still seeing this, right? Okay. So we have the Gilulehem here, and we have another Hema, right? We have the Hema up here, and we have the Hema again down here. And now what do we do here? It's almost looks like Syriac, the way that they write this. In Syriac text, there's pretty much like it's almost like cursive, whereas this is a script, but the way that they've written these letters make it look almost cursive.
They put two letters together maybe here?
They put three letters together actually.
Wow.
So we have a bait, a noon, and actually a yod here. And they did that.
Yeah.
We have B'nai, and this is Sadok.
So the righteous.
Well, Sadok,
priest.
the
Zadok.
priest. Who is that? Who is Zadok?
It's Sadok, the priestly family of Zadok.
Yeah. So this is the chief priest. This is the high priest who Solomon puts up on the second temple.
Right.
Or over his. Sorry, not over the second temple. Over his temple, but that's sort of the like priestly family that runs things.
Well, there was a big debate, wasn't there, though, whether it was the line of Zadok or whether it was a different line.
So the Qumran community themselves believe that they think that they are the Ben Zadok. So they've already evoked. So if this Ezekiel quote is right, they are evoking this temple language, right, with this defilement, becoming unclean. So I think this sort of confirms our Ezekiel quote, right? Because they're evoking this priestly family. And if you read in other texts in Qumran, this is who the community thinks that they are. They see themselves as the true priestly line from Ben Zadok. So they'll use this to talk about themselves in the community role, or in the community rule, especially. Yeah. So the scroll gets a little fractured here and is a bit hard to read. And we sort of don't really know what to do with some of this because of what's going on. There's potentially the word for like the people of the assembly here, but we're not really sure what is going on because you can see how fractured the scroll is, even with the manuscript.
Dave, the belief of the B'nai Zadok, is that they believe that they actually were in the line of ancestrally, or they thought that was a spiritual kind of thing?
Ooh, I don't know. There's probably some debate on that amongst. I don't know. I don't know if there's a spot in the scroll where they have like a genealogy or not. I'm not sure, but I know that this evokes language of the community rule, especially, and there's probably something in there, but I don't know that scroll enough to say whether or not. And actually, as we're trying to reconstruct and think about the scroll, the way they actually took the picture of this scroll is wrong. So this would actually make so the way that this scroll is lined up for the picture, you would think that this line right here, right? Let me zoom in. You would actually think this line right here goes with the previous line where we had the quote with Ezekiel. But actually, if we count the lines here with the other side of the scroll here, this line actually goes with our line right here. So this should actually be dropped down a line. Right?
Yep.
And something's happening here for the rest of the line. We don't know. And there's no real good way to reconstruct this other than this line ends with Yachad right here, which is their name for their community.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So togetherness. Yeah. That's how they pictured themselves. This is the sort of their self-given name almost. So they're the Yachad. They're the ones who are together.
Versus the way. Must be a different group.
Yeah. those ones were following the guy from Galilee, right? And obviously nothing good can come from Nazareth.
It comes from Galilee.
From Galilee, right?
Prophet
Yeah.
ever come from Galilee? Well, actually, yes.
So now, so we're going to line 5 now. So we're sort of trying to wrap things up. Now we've got about 10 minutes left. And here's where our text comes in. And I'll sort of give you guys this so that we can end at 3. I don't want to keep you guys any longer. But the text keeps going and actually starts quoting Psalm 2. And we see this. We have the Goyim ul Umim here. And just a little bit of Yehegeh and a little bit of the Yityatzavu right here. You'll see those letters. The Gimel is a little bit different than the Vav, and you got 2 yods to show that long E, the Goyim. You got the Ulumim and the yod and the Hey. And this is sort of the spot where we're talking about, where there's just this big open place. But we know that the scribe is quoting Psalm 2, because if we keep going, we see Al Adonai, or we see that they're gathering together, right? Even though this is a little bit broken up, this is what we had with Psalm 2:2, where these nations are gathering together. Al Adonai va'al, and Mashiach is probably the next part of the next line, because this is where the line ends. And unfortunately, the last line is pretty broken up, and we can only make out a couple of words here and there because of how just destroyed the text is. But we do get this last part where the community talks about itself as the Bachirei Yisrael. So they are the chosen ones of Israel. Ba'acharit hayamim. That's how they end the text. That's how the scroll ends.
Wow.
So here we have the full text that we've been able to reconstruct through our various methods, right? Through looking at how this passage quotes Ezekiel, how it quotes the Psalter, how it quotes Isaiah, and how it just smashes them all together. And it creates this, it's this interesting exegetical practice of not seeing, we have these in modern times, we have books on good exegetical practices, right? Of, there are 5 or there are 10 steps to a good exegesis of a text. And if you don't follow these 10 steps, then you're a bad exegete of the text. And I think that early scribes would have I think scribes of, especially in these traditions, these scribes would probably have something to say about exegetical practices today. Not to say that I think, taking things out of context or doing bad exegesis is good, but if you wanted to understand this text and how it's understanding other texts, you wouldn't be using the exegetical practices normally taught in seminary, right?
Well,
For your sermons.
and certainly the apostles and Jesus didn't follow those steps. So
That's where I'm getting at a little bit, is I think there's something to be said about immersing ourselves into the text here, right? This community was so, the focus of it was so much about understanding the text. They took Psalm 1 about the Yehegegel Manvalayla, the chewing on the Torah day and night, very seriously, as well as other scribal communities. And with their immersion into the text, they're able to evoke multiple contexts at once to state what they're trying to say. They're evoking Psalm 1 with its garden imagery and with its the way of life and the way of destruction, which eventually that's what it becomes. It's evoking Psalm 2, where you have the Messiah and God standing together against these people that are trying to fight against it. It has this Ezekiel passage where you have the priesthood that is going to become clean. And then you have this Isaiah passage where you have God turning people back from the way of, with a strong hand. And it's using all of these passages together to talk about, they're using it then to talk about how they view their eschatology. Right?
Right.
And it feels a little insane, right? Trying to get all these pieces together, because there's so much here. And I'm sure that there's a lot going on in the background that we're not even, privy to. But I feel like this is a very cool way of jumping into exegetical practices that are foreign to Western thinkers who are taught to think of text otherwise and to have rigid rules on how text should be quoted and understood. And I think the Qumran community would have something to say about that. I don't know. I hope this exercise was helpful. It's a very different way of reading the scrolls, right? You could go to the critical edition and get everything for yourself. And I guess that's fine and dandy. But to actually get into the manuscripts themselves, to see how the scribes are processing these texts it takes a lot more time, it takes a lot of practice, but I hope it was worth your afternoon. But you can access these scrolls through the Dead Sea Scrolls digital library. It's free and open. sometimes finding your scroll or text that you're trying to look for is a little difficult because of the way numbering and stuff is. But you know, I wish more people were doing this. This is something that we should be valuing and putting some time into. So anyway, any questions?
No question, but definitely thank you, Dave, for doing this. I mean, I know this may be not the, how do I put this? Working with the scrolls just seems, for me, it feels like you're becoming or getting that much closer to the writers, to the scribe who wrote it. I mean, you know, at some point you start seeing, and we saw some of this, particular habits, and some of that's just the way they write, but it makes a person become more real, who is actually part of the process of transmission of scripture. And it brings it more present. And I think anytime we bring that, we allow avenues for God to bring things from his word more present into our lives, that is a blessing.
Yeah. I definitely feel like it's the net. So you always hear this, you know, learning to read the biblical languages is there's the famous is, you know, reading the Bible in translation is like kissing your bride through the veil, right? That's like the famous metaphor. Well, I think I would take that one step closer and say just reading a critical edition of a text without actually getting into the scroll is that final step. Like, you can't get any closer than having to put time, because not only are you putting time into learning the language and trying to think in, you know, with the Hebrew text, but you're actually like with the script itself, getting in there, trying to figure this out, trying different ways to potentially fill in the gaps, being okay with gaps sometimes. And it's that last final step that just doesn't, it's not taken that often. But when it's done, I think there is a lot of payoff in terms of understanding that the scribal culture, the writing system, all of it. And there's no barriers whatsoever between other than 2,000 years. What you did today, there's no barriers whatsoever between you and the scribe at Qumran, right?
But when you know, and no, we can't physically touch this one. It's safely ensconced in the museum of the book. But you know, there's it, and I've actually, you know, I have a few Torah portions that are a few hundred years old. But even every step with our senses and our eyes and it just gets us closer. It's just it's amazing.
Yeah.
I was to say, seeing the spacing is awesome too, because you don't have to guess how did the manuscript do this. When I'm reading a critical edition or something, I'm like, are they leaving something out here that I could have seen?
And this is an issue with some of the reconstruction. James Tucker just finished up his dissertation at the University of Toronto, looking at this and questioning a lot of scholarly practices with spacing. I mean, luckily we didn't run into any major spacing issues with ours, but if you looked at a critical edition, you would just see vakat, right? There's a space. Okay, well, what does that mean? Like, there's just a space in the text. But if you're there looking at it, you can say, okay, there's 3 or 4 words here. We know why, because I've looked at the rest of the scroll. Right. And it's there, and I don't have to rely on someone else reconstructing the text for me. I can do it myself.
And I think what would also be cool is, and maybe you can, Dave, if you can do more of these, what would also be cool is if we could almost line up, compare scroll to scroll. I mean, not to the, I mean, yes, to the text, you know, maybe the printed text, but I'm just thinking of, okay, we've got the great Isaiah scroll. Let's take a few other Isaiah scrolls that we have. And it's just because, we also talk about, the transmission of the text in terms of consistency.
Yeah.
Let's look at the Isaiah scroll and let's take a scroll from, 1,000 years later or something.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can definitely look at that yourself. It is 3:00. So I do want to, be a good steward of everybody's time. So if you guys have any questions, I think you all know my email. So please feel free to shoot me an email. If you don't, it's david@biblingo.org. Super easy and simple. So those who were late, we've recorded it and we'll send you it. And hopefully this is a fun exercise. I know I had a lot of fun putting it together and reading it with you all, and it stretched me quite a bit. And I hope it helped you appreciate the text more.
Toda rabah.
Yeah. All right. Shalom.